But when you first saw this climber, like, skewered with a, just sitting there, like, shish kebab style, what was your initial thought assessment?
God exists. So I only say that I just remember just kind of looking in awe of this man that was stopped by this branch or tree when the cliff, uh, easily, I don't know, 5-10 more feet approximately, he would have fallen to his death surely, right?
Welcome to the Calm and the Chaos podcast, where we discuss untold heroic experiences and dive into the mindset of the Navy's elite rescue swimmers. Hosted by former U.S. Navy Aviation Rescue Swimmer, Mount Everest solo summiteer, and best-selling author Brian Dickinson.
Hey everyone, it's Brian Dickinson. If you're enjoying these stories, please take a second to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. It helps more people find these conversations, and it keeps the mission alive. And if you want early access to new episodes and to support what we're building, consider becoming a Spotify paid subscriber. Your support means everything. Now let's jump in so others may live. All right, super, super pumped today. Drew Worth, Master Chief, still in 30 years. Amazing. So long. I mean, a lot of our listeners aren't even that old. Greg Highfill, 20 years retired. You were a SAR MedTech chief. One of the most incredible stories in the book, Calm and the Chaos. Just love it. I mean, when I tell a story that people ask about the book, I'm like, oh, let me tell you this story. It's just so enticing and just goes across everything that we could, even, train for or not train for. It's just, working so outside of the box. I don't know. I love every aspect of this story. I'm so glad to have you both on. And this is my second threesome that I've had on here. And it's so great to have a threesome with the two of you. So thanks for being here, both of you.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, of course. Well, I guess we'll just go back and forth here so we're not speaking over each other. But Greg, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, where'd you grow up?
So I grew up largely in Northern California. Spent a little time in the San Francisco Bay Area, and then moved way up north to Cottonwood, California. So kind of middle of nowhere.
Yeah, where is that?
Closest Redding, Red Bluff.
Okay.
Not too far from the Oregon border, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I grew up in Rogue River.
Oh, you know exactly. Okay, yeah.
Yep. That's crazy. Yeah. I thought I recognized you. So how was it growing up there?
It was great. You know what? I started off, when I was really young, totally into the Navy. Really loved it. Had a passion for everything military. I don't know why, but everyone's got their thing, I guess. And so I was like in Sea Cadets and the Navy League and all that. So I was actually heartbroken to move to like true Northern California, away from the ocean, away from the water and
Mhm.
stuff, away from the military. And so I actually had parents that were really cool, would drive me back 4 hours to the Bay Area to be able to do that kind of stuff. So I grew up moving back and forth, trying to do those kind, trying to do the summer weekends and the summer weeks, playing Navy as, like a young teenager, basically. So
Mhm.
that was kind of my gig. Played lots of sports, really active, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Which there's not much else to do up there, to be honest with you. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And especially in that day and age, right? Because I don't know if the internet had existed at that point, but you had to get outside and explore. Yeah, that's
yeah,
awesome.
absolutely, yeah. Always outside, always doing stuff. It's kind of always been the theme. Always want to be out there. So.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's beautiful there. Drew, how about yourself? Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, we definitely didn't have cell phones back when we were younger. That's for sure. So I was born in Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I grew up in Utah.
Oh, wow.
Eventually, I got kicked out of my house by my mother. My parents were divorced when I was like 17, and then I moved to Arizona and graduated high school out of there. Yeah, that's my life.
How long were you in Oklahoma?
I don't remember it. I always consider myself an Okie, but I was only there for 2 or 3 years. So I left there when I was like 3 years old.
Oh, okay.
But I
Yeah.
tend to like a lot of people from Oklahoma because of that.
Yep. Yeah, that's an interesting place. Yeah, it's crazy just with the twisters and everything that occur there. It's amazing. Just the whole lifestyle and everything. It's like, why would you live there? But I guess there's natural disaster anywhere that you're at. So,
Well, I totally true. I love Utah. Utah is definitely the place I'll end up going back home to eventually, and that's what the family is.
uh-huh.
But Utah is the place to be.
Where in Utah?
Salt Lake City, southern part. It's called Draper, and
Oh yeah.
getting a little expensive there, but I plan on trying to find a home there once I finally retire. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's a great place. Lots of adventure. So you guys both grew up with decent upbringings, but something drove you to go in the military. So Greg, from you said you were always enthralled with the Navy, but what actually planted that seed for you?
Well, like I was saying, I grew up in the California Bay Area. That was back in the 80s, the early 90s, I guess you could say. And there was a really heavy Navy presence. I lived
Okay.
right outside of Naval Air Station Moffett Field. There was Alameda Naval Air Station, and there was so much there.
Mhm.
Um, I saw them every day flying overhead. Got to watch the ships go in and out. Got to see all the stuff going on that they got to do, and I always thought it was an amazing life. It looked like a lot of fun. They were always out doing things. Looks can be deceiving, but as a young kid, you're like, wow, that's really cool that they're flying, they're out playing around in the dirt and stuff like that,
Mhm.
with some of the Marine units that were there. And so that stuck with me forever, and I wanted to get into it whenever I could. Air shows, all that stuff, was
Yeah.
was always keeping an eye on it. And as a kid, I'd be able to like recite things about the F-14 Tomcat and things like that. So I just was always taken by their presence. They were always around. They always looked cool. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and some of the stories that you'd hear from the guys always impressed me. Looked like a good job, and it looked like something that you could have fun doing.
Yeah. Yeah, did it were all of your expectations fulfilled?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, kind of went a different route. A lot of ships, obviously, in the Bay Area. Saw search and rescue a little bit, just enough to kind of be like enticed by it. Knew of it, didn't know much about it. But as a transition, as I got into it, definitely would say like got to see all kinds of the helicopter aviation stuff going on and things like that. And
Mhm.
then later in my career, got to play with all the same stuff. So
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a fun path. How about you, Drew? What made you want
yeah,
to go in the Navy?
I mean, my family's a very patriotic family, and my grandfather served in the Navy. My father served in the Army, so I always grew up kind of like hiding and dressing like I was a sniper in the back of the bushes, running around, in the fields, going out shooting with the family and stuff. Now, I don't know what drove me to the Navy necessarily. Maybe the first Top Gun. The first Top Gun really made
Yep, and there it is.
and then and that definitely played a role later in life with it being the U.S. Enterprise, and that ended up being my first carrier and seeing a rescue swimmer jumping out, which is a small community. We eventually know each other. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, it's just very patriotic family. I always wanted to serve. I just didn't know how I wanted to serve, and it just worked out that way.
Nice. Did you go straight in like a guaranteed like rescue swimmer opportunity, or did you do something prior?
Yeah, no, I went straight in. I was legit. My first was straight to buds, so I ended up going to buds right away, and I ended up peeing blood. So I had a medical condition. I had to get out of the Navy, and I get some stuff checked out. And after I got clearance and a waiver for my kidneys, I learned while I was in to have a guarantee from there on out. And I heard about the search and rescue thing, so I thought, well, I'll go try the search and rescue thing. So once I got in it, I enjoyed the company and the small community, and it's just fun. It's been good. I
Yeah.
stayed.
How far in until you were peeing blood?
Yeah, so I was first phase, literally the week before Hell Week, which kind of sucks. Yeah, so we had NDOC back then. So you spent about a month in NDOC, and then eventually, about 4 or 5 weeks into first phase.
Yep. Don't they want you to pee blood? Isn't that like?
I think that's a thing, but
It's like
it was.
We got a medic here. Tell us. You're like, no, don't do that.
Yeah, overexertion of my kidneys are definitely not a thing. They don't work well together. But as long as I drink a lot of water, I've learned from that. I didn't drink as much water as I should have been drinking. I should be okay from here on out. That's
scary stuff. I've done that just in training for mountaineering and high altitude mountaineering and stuff. And you get back from a big hike or a run or something, and it's like just pure blood. You're like, oh my gosh, it's scary. But then it's just passes, and you're like, okay, maybe it's fine. I don't know.
Yeah, as a young 19-year-old, when that first happened, it definitely freaked me out a little bit. And I was glad to be able to get back in, though.
Yeah. No, that's wild. So, Greg, did you go straight in as a medic?
I did. It's funny that Drew talks about that. I actually chose being a hospital corpsman based off of the list of jobs that were eligible to go to BUDS, be a SEAL, that kind of thing. And I tested out in boot camp, and then I tested out in hospital corps school, my first command. And it was always, the corpsman rating's too full over there. Oh, they're not taking corpsman. Oh, the command's not going to let you go. And so I struggled to try. I wanted to be operational. There's a whole reason I came into the Navy, is to be operational in some way. And so the corpsman rating, kind of lucky enough, you get to go some different directions. It's kind of like this eclectic kind of thing where you can go all over the place, right? And so I went Fleet Marine Force, and then later on, it kind of got me towards search and rescue by doing like personnel recovery stuff and the trap teams that the Marines use for their search and rescue and stuff. So definitely, it was definitely by chance, but truly lucked out. I thought it was a great career field.
Yeah. How was training for that?
For hospital corpsmen specifically, it's changed. It changes, just like the Navy does. It changes throughout the years. I believe it was about 5 to 8 weeks of hospital corps school in San Diego. So you're right across the street from the large Naval Medical Center, Balboa. And within eyeshot of Coronado, of course, where, things are going on. But it's a really great program. It's unbelievable the stuff that they put those guys through in order to get them ready to go to the fleet. So, but by no means does it like capture everything that you do out there. Medicine's a broad thing, so it's kind of hard.
Oh yeah, for sure. Now, when you got into more of like the SAR medicals in flight, was there additional like types of training that you had to do to be qualified for that, or did everything just kind of transfer over?
No, well, I mean, there's a pipeline to some extent. Back when I started with search and rescue, specifically with the Navy and the Navy inland SAR units and things like that, there were only, and listeners don't hang me on this, there were only about 45 people out there as SAR med techs. The pipeline had requirements before you could become one. You couldn't declare in boot camp. You had to have operational experience as one of the things that was a requirement. You had to have at least completed EMT school. So there was some stuff over and above a regular corpsman before going to search and rescue. And then they put you through a pipeline. But the pipeline at the time was, you go to air crew school, and then you go to the inland rescue course, do a couple of things like that. And then you're at Station SAR, which was originally when I first started, which was the only place SAR medtechs could go, which is a lot different now with the fleet-wide implementation of SAR medtechs out there.
Yeah. What year was that?
That was 2008, 2009 when I transferred over to doing search and rescue full time.
Okay. Yeah, we didn't have any SMTs when I was in the 90s. Man, we sure could have used them though. It's amazing just the direction, things definitely change for the better. There's old salts a lot of times that are like, don't need all that. But it's amazing when you have that level of expertise, and you know, like Drew knows, like when we went through SAR, it's like you have advanced, you know, first aid. It's enough to hopefully keep them alive, to get them to someone like yourself that has a clue what they're doing. But it's a lot, you know. There's so many jobs, you know, that we all do as air crew. So I think it's awesome that, you know, they have the SMTs, and I've heard nothing but great things. And like we were saying earlier, you know, Drew says you are one of the best chiefs, if not that he's ever worked with, and it's just because of just who you are, your willingness to train, because all of us want to learn more and be more proficient in what we do. So I think definitely people are blessed to have you in the helo with them.
It's funny you guys mentioned that. That's actually from a learned experience. Going through operational stuff and being with the Marines and the Navy and stuff like that. Then you go inland SAR, and you feel like you got it all down, right? I'm search and rescue, right? That's cool. What could go? This is nothing. This is like inland SAR. This is station SAR. Cool, right? We're gonna go have a good time. We're gonna go do rappelling. We're gonna do all this stuff. I had a wake up call on my first rescue after getting done with training and getting onboarded at Whidbey Island. Actually, my first rescue was the rescue of a gentleman who was a leader in, and everyone knew him in mountain rescue. Educator, taught everybody, was well known, and unfortunately, he had a slip and fall, and we took a long time to find him. He was deceased from the fall, and that kind of was a wake up call to me. It's like, hey, this is no joke. Like this is mountain rescue with a helicopter, nonetheless. And if that guy can have a slip and fall and die, then there's no master of this field. The terrain and the weather and just maybe bad luck, it could get you at any time. So that kind of led to, you know what? I'm going to learn everything about this. We're going to be a master as much as possible at the mountain portion of it. And, that'll hopefully help everyone, but it'll help the crew and all to, basically like survive the rescues. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we all know, I mean, thanks for sharing that. That's just a level of vulnerability that we are human. I see it the same in high altitude mountaineering. You can have some of the best mountaineers with so much experience, and you train for the things within your control, but an avalanche takes you out. You can be, serving others, trying to rescue others, and now everyone's in these unique situations that are super dangerous, and people die. I mean, 100% of humans die. That's a statistic that goes strong, but it doesn't mean that we don't try everything we can or learn everything we can to not only survive ourselves, but to help others survive. And it's unfortunate that happens. Same with helo crashes and everything else. You have some amazing people that we've all lost. Drew.
Yes, sir.
What year did you go through SAR?
So I went through SAR in 1995,
Okay.
the summer of 1995, and eventually ended up at HS7 in Jacksonville, Dusty Dogs.
Nice.
And then I was lucky enough to go back to SAR school after that as an instructor, and then SAR mall manager. Then I finally came to San Diego on the West Coast to HS10, which is gone now, which was a rag. And then eventually Whidbey, right? After that. It's interesting what Greg is talking about. I think it took to a point where I got to Whidbey and had some reality checks, much the same as what Greg is talking about. And I think by the time I got there, Greg was so far into, he's not the only example there. Everybody at Whidbey at the time, when I showed up there, they had incredibly high expectations to know your job before we actually had an opportunity to go rescue people. And we stayed busy there. So you had the desire to get in the aircraft and go fly and rescue somebody. And like I said, Greg was one of those examples medically. I thought it was pretty good because our school has the basics, foundations, but he took me to a whole nother level. And it was just, it's more the concept of the practical or the trauma assessments and stuff like that is how do you deal with the patient in a bad circumstance? And all those things were really cool. So I've always had high respect for him as an example. He's one of the very few early on SMTs, and it's definitely carried on to this whole another world where we have a bunch of them. I actually have one in my squadron now. I wish all these SMTs could have the experience like Greg and I had at some of these inland places, because that's where you have a chance to really learn stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'd be neat to have, or have mandatory duty stations before, but it's just realistic. There's just not enough humans, and there's a lot bigger need. But yeah. But when you have someone like Greg that can, guide others based on experience and wisdom, I mean, that's huge as well. So, all right, well, you've blushed over your initial SAR school. How was that experience?
It sucked.
That's why you blushed over it.
Yeah. So, I there's a lot of people that grew up as swimmers. I've always been pretty physically fit. I've always been an athlete. I wrestled and played baseball all my life. I definitely powered through SAR school. I had zero technique to swimming. It was pure cardiovascular intensity, suck it up, brute force all the way through the end. And it wasn't until way later in my life where I realized technique can take you a long way. But yeah, it was tough. And I really enjoyed the company, but we had the Coast Guard in our courses back then. And it was really cool to see these coasties that are coming from their schoolhouse into ours, and just very capable people that you're surrounding yourself with. And it's the first time I've ever been surrounded by people that I just really enjoyed being around. So it was tough, but it was fun. Yeah.
Did you pee blood?
I did not.
Nice.
No. So, and like you had mentioned, that's post buds. I just got better. I drank a lot more water, took care of myself, was smart about how I did my daily routines.
Mm-hmm.
Buds was just kind of, I was just young and stupid, not really take care of myself for sure. I was to go back there.
Young and stupid. I still feel I'm kind of old and stupid, but we're just guys, and we never learn.
Sure.
We do, to a certain extent. No, that's cool. So you were in 95. What do you remember the most difficult portion of training?
And final moulage was not fun at all. I was the last guy to do our final multi in the pool. And as you remember, it was the final example or scenario in the water where you recover a bunch of people. And I heard my fellow students like going through it, and I could hear them come back, whether they pass or fail. But this was the final judgment piece, right? If we would have passed this, we were going to be considered aviation rescue swimmers. And when I finally got up there, and they brought you up to the platform, and I jumped out. The scenario was I was going to have 12 survivors in the water. They all spoke a different language.
Oh,
and
nice.
It blew my mind. In the water, and people are screaming and chasing me, and jumping on me everywhere. So it was just all out hell in the water. But it was a cool experience.
Did they have 12 survivors?
Yeah,
oh wow,
12 survivors. Yeah. So
crazy.
We had, I can't remember the teams back then. It was 8. I remember the 12 because it was the other team was pretty much all in the water doing this kind of stuff, and all pretending they were speaking another language. It was quite miserable. So I don't know if an instructor really liked me or disliked me. They put me in a pretty tough situation, but it was fun.
Well, so then you went back and you were an instructor. So I guess why would you do that to someone? In my mind, it's because you've already proven yourself. You're going, let's challenge you a little bit more because you're doing well in all the other stuff. But I don't know. Yeah,
I mean, that makes sense now, right? And no. At the time, I was just kind of blown away, and it was a shock and awe. This by far nothing I would expect, but it also taught me to that point. It was the first time I used the rescue net to that point either, right? Oh. So tossing 2 people on a rescue net. It was actually a really quick recovery once I got my head together, and I got them off of me. But yeah, I mean, I wish we had the rescue net still. We do actually have a rescue net, but it was really easy to just throw 2 people in. But it was also a realistic scenario, vice. Just assuming that you're going to have this easy ejection, pull them out of the aircraft, put them in a litter, and put them up in the aircraft. That happens sometimes, sure. But realistically, we have ships going down or we're recovering multiple people in the water. It was a very, very realistic scenario for what other people have experienced in their lives. And so I was glad to experience it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's not, I don't know, there's not like one right answer, but it's how you respond. If you're going to panic and, there's so many things that could go wrong, but clearly you kept your head straight. And that'd be interesting because now you're hoisting up 12 survivors, but then you have to go through the moulage, kind of the full night, the final multi up there. So that I guess they were just kind of getting them out of the way. And
yeah, now that you mentioned it, I don't remember doing moulage once I got back in the aircraft, to be honest with you, but that was the standard. You end up doing a rush, you come back in the aircraft, and then you would do some sort of moulage scenario. I don't remember doing that back then. I don't know if it's something we matured to and did more later on, but I don't remember doing that in my final.
What language, like how did you communicate with all these people? Did you use the standard language of love?
Pretty much it was called grab them and dunk them, like stop messing up, right? So the ones that give you problems, you just keep them in close and tight, right?
Yep.
Dunk them and kind of go along with them, make them suffer and get them tired. I had a couple of those, made them tired, and just kind of went with it. And then eventually everybody just wanted to be done with the fight and get into the net so it can be done with the scenario. But just kind of hanging up. I don't know what language all of them were speaking. They were just making up in tongues for sure. So no other way to communicate. Just big rafts and pulling them out and stuff like that.
Yep. That's fun. All right. So then you both kind of went your separate routes through your training and experiences and ended up at Whidbey SAR up in Washington State. Year did you get up there?
Right around early 2009, I believe, is when I showed up at Whidbey.
Nice. Were you the same, Drew?
Yeah, it was shortly after Greg got there, but he was definitely there and running the place by the time it had to be late 2009, if I was to guess.
Okay.
So you know what? I'm totally wrong on that one. Actually, I showed up in 2005.
That makes more sense. So
I'm senile. I'm old. Yeah, that's kind of how it goes. You'll get there eventually, Drew. Trust me. It's
and that makes more sense.
Well, how long were you both stationed there?
I actually left in 2009.
I left 2011 and got there, I think, early 2008. So 3 years.
Okay, so you guys only overlapped for a little bit. But in 2008, when you showed up and you saw Greg for the first time, tell us about your initial impression of each other.
So I don't remember a lot of things. Greg, what was that mountain that was on the island?
Oh, you know what? I don't remember what the name
D
was,
mountain,
actually.
H mountain.
It was the only one.
But my first scenario with Greg was he took me out on the mountain where I rappelled down on this cliff. And the cool thing was this mountain was just on the island itself. And it was a little surprise to me, but that was the first experience where I actually had to rappel to a survivor. And I'm telling you, Greg was not a jerk to a point where he was just trying to prove that he's smarter than everybody else. He really taught you and went out of his way to teach you the techniques to do things the best way he knew how. Not that his way was always the right way. He would continue to learn different things. It was really cool. Crampons, as an example, was a huge lesson for our boots, walking around in the aircraft with big spikes on your feet. And actually the rescue that we eventually did, we actually had to wear those things. But my first impression of him was that first training evolution up on the mountain. He was all over me. And it was a pretty eye-opening experience.
That's cool. Greg, is that your initial as well? Or do you have a story?
It's funny, we're talking to a guy who obviously he's got 30 years in SAR, and we heard, it's a small community. We knew about him before he came to Whidbey. And all amazing things. And tell you what, like, this guy comes in and so competent and confident in everything that he does. It's something, everyone's good at SAR. You don't get through school without being good at it. You don't get through your first deployments and stuff like that. But what he brought to Whidbey was amazing. I never saw the guy stress about anything. He was always so cool and calm about everything. going on rescues, but going on training, we trained a lot. It felt like, and nothing ever rattled this guy at all, ever. He was
So
always so
would you
calm
would
and
you say he's
like,
calm in the chaos?
absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Oh man,
Yeah,
let's get
he's
cheesy.
the epitome of that one, I think.
That's awesome.
Um,
That's what I
and
hear
then
as well. I mean, for both of you though.
and his ability to work in the aircraft, work out of the aircraft, um, it it doesn't take a lot to have a guy come in and get going on things and learn kind of a different. Yeah, it's a different vibe. It would be, like it would. There's water, there's mountains. It didn't matter what came his way. He was always amazing out there. There's nobody I would rather fly with out there. And we had a lot of good guys, but he definitely stood out. When I think of SAR and think of Whidbey and things like that, I think of him, and how calm and cool he is. He's the epitome of Navy SAR out there, I think, in my opinion.
All right. We're getting
Onward.
we're getting a little too match.com or singlefarmers.com here. Let's dial it back a little bit. You guys, you're clearly both awesome. So, appreciate that. Let's talk about the rescue that's in the book. This is just such an incredible just experience, and I don't know, there's so many different levels about this story. And that's why I initially was talking to Drew, interviewing you as far as, what rescue should we talk about? You mentioned this one. I'm like, oh, that's happening. We're putting that in the book. And then you're talking about, well, there's some gaps, in your knowledge. You should talk to Greg. I'm like, all right, reached out to Greg and he filled in those gaps. So got it from both perspectives. Probably should have interviewed like the pilot and I forget who the hoist operator was.
Yeah, Eric de Burkhardt, and
That's right.
I can't remember who the pilots were. Casey Bruce was one of them for sure.
Also. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I mentioned them in the book, but it's always good just to get every perspective because so much is happening in those moments, and you're very, just super focused on what you're doing. And in this scenario, there's so many things that could go wrong. So I don't know who wants to set up the scenario because it was up in the Cascades. An ice climber had fallen for hundreds of feet, and I'm just gonna let you guys talk from there.
You want to start off, Greg?
You know what? I don't remember what the call out came as originally, and it's always different when you show up anyway. So, do you recollect how that went down on that day? Because I don't remember that one. Like what it actually started off as.
Yeah, so I remember it just being an ice climber that had supposedly fallen in this general area in the Cascades. And I don't know how, I think the sheriff's department was nearby, if I remember right, that they didn't have the ability to hoist or do any of the operations we did. And we've had avalanches in there in the past. I remember finding them pretty darn quickly. And the avalanche was pretty clear. I remember that fuel was always a consideration. So I know the pilots had looked for a place down below after Greg identified where we were going to place ourselves. And Greg was the lead on those things, and SFTs generally were. But I remember him noting the big tree that was well above the survivor and him identifying where he had fallen from. And the avalanche just took him down from his attempt to ice climb these cliffs. And he told me that we were going to tie off in a tree and rappel down once we got locked on down there, which is nothing we've ever trained for before. Normally we just rappel straight out of the aircraft down to the survivor. But this was something a little bit different. So we did rappel to the big tree and we locked off at the big tree while the helicopter kind of like cleared out of the way so we can actually hear each other, number one, and not be concerned about further avalanches in the area.
Let's talk about the climber himself. He fell, and the only thing that stopped him from falling to his death was a tree. He basically got skewered. It went through his back and out his front, or through his front out his back?
It was back to front, right, Greg?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And if when talking to him, I think we actually talked to him after the rescue. We always tried to kind of follow up with him to see what, went down. What could we do different? Those kind of things. and he was pretty darn close to the top of that area, which kind of made him easy to find, lucky enough, because there really wasn't anything else around. He had taken a large chunk of like snow ice with him. He was like trying to anchor to it, or trying to use it as a handhold, and pulled it off with him. So he didn't just tumble down the hill with a little bit of snow, and he was traveling with this chunk of snow ice. And I'm guessing that when he actually hit that tree, he was maybe still holding on to that thing. So he had the weight of all of that on top of him to push him onto the tree, or the stick kind of thing that was out there.
So when you guys first, there was no direct path like to him. You had to rappel down to that tree, create an anchor system, then rappel down. And I remember you guys saying you pounded out like kind of a snow ice shelf for your gear and everything. But when you first saw this climber, like, skewered with a, just sitting there, like, shish kebab style, what was your initial thought assessment?
God exists. So, I only say that I just remember just kind of looking in awe of this man that was stopped by this branch or tree when the cliff, easily, I don't know, 5-10 more feet approximately, he would have fallen to his death surely, right? So it blew my mind that someone could be in this particular situation. What Greg is talking about with the weight of the snow, that makes sense. It is not a sight that I would have expected to see, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And your initial response a lot of times, can cause panic and shock. So you guys had to act like you see this every day.
So Greg was talking about me being all calm, cool, and collective in chaos. And I think I told you, I'm a duck. That's what I consider myself. I'm always pretty smooth on the lake. I am kicking the crap out of my legs down below. I'm not calm and clear and concise, right? But it definitely show face. And again, timing wise, Greg was the senior guy there, right? And I was in that position to really look up for guidance. And in that rescue particularly, I was surely looking for him for all the guidance. And normally the AWs would be there to support with the equipment and things. And in this case, I had to have the extra ropes and gear and stuff like that. And he would normally bring a small kit with him, and I'd bring all his extra stuff. So I was basically providing all the extra support and kind of digging the snow and making sure there was a place for him to lie down. And the one unusual thing this time we brought was that we requested the saw, because I don't remember ever sawing a tree before during a rescue. Outside of that, though, yeah, it's kind of a mind-blowing experience for sure. That's definitely one of my more exciting rescues. And then 24 hours, I had another rescue. But we were always really busy there. But this one definitely clicks into one of the coolest ones, because there's so much that you had to think about between the crampons, the ice, walking around the aircraft without, messing up the aircraft, and jumping and rappelling, and gas, trying to save some gas, getting to the hospital, keeping the guys safe. There was just so many things that were just mind blowing that I never experienced in my life before for the very first time. But again,
probably the climber too.
Well, yeah, absolutely, man. Sure.
So whose idea was it to saw the branch?
I don't think we had a choice in that.
I don't know that there was really a whole conversation about it.
For the listeners, why wouldn't you have just pulled the branch out?
Oh, good point. Yeah. Go ahead, Greg. You're the corpsman.
Once it's in there, the guy's sitting in the snow. It's nice and cold. Could be stopping the bleeding. It's pressed up against things in him. We don't know what's going on. And the guy's got all kinds of clothes on. It was, if I remember correctly, it was a really cold day. It was chilly out there.
Yeah.
So you're not seeing what's going on. And that's something that sticks in my head all the time is, what you're seeing that's not all of it by any means, right? So leave that thing in there, make sure that the guy's we're going to yank that thing out and it's going to look cool like a movie. And then he's going to bleed all over the place and we're going to hurt him. So, and I think also, it was probably the fastest way to do it also. There weren't very many options out there. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So like I know in our training, if there's a protruding object, you leave it in. And because once you pull that out, I mean you could bleed out. You can pull out organs, and I know Greg, when you had mentioned where the entry point was and the exit was totally different. So it probably bent inside of his body and exited a different route. So even to pull that out, could have been very catastrophic, and you don't want that on your watch, and it's just not the right thing to do. So what you ended up doing was sawing it on each side.
yeah, I don't even recall. There wasn't a whole lot of conversation between us. Um, you know, it's loud there. You have the aircraft overhead. It's blowing. Um, and it kind of seemed like we were kind of just we were going with the flow, but we were together on all this stuff. Like, hey, what are we gonna do? We're gonna build, an anchor, and we're gonna go down the hill. Hey, we're gonna saw this, and he's definitely was taking the lead and getting all that stuff down and everything. But just again, I was saying he'd calm, cool, and collective, but there wasn't a whole lot of scratching heads and stuff. It was very fluid.
Mhm.
We kind of just powered through it. It seemed like, and kind of just encountered things and solved them as it happened.
Yeah. And that's exactly, you train so hard, and then when it actually comes down to it, you trusted in each other, even the crew and the helo, you're communicating with them. You don't want them kicking off an avalanche and ruining all the good things that you're working on right there. And you call them in when you need them.
Yeah, I would agree. That was definitely the a more mature and experienced group that we were with. And you're right, it was pretty fluid. And I don't think if I would have been early on my stage, it would have gone that smoothly from my perspective. But it did go pretty smooth. I just remember the ice climber really freaking out about his clothes he was wearing, right? And this tree branch was going through his jacket. So I don't know what he was worried about, because I remember cutting his clothes off to verify he didn't have other injuries. And he had this large hole in his arm jacket too. And I remember cutting that part off, and we had to deal with the injury on his arm too. But he was freaking out about his clothes, right? Obviously in shock.
Mhm.
And it was cold. I remember having icicles coming out of my nose for sure. So yeah, huge shock, just pretty mind blowing experience for sure.
Yeah. And you guys set them in the litter on that ice shelf, and were you able to hoist them up from there, or did you have to? Yeah.
Yeah, we hoisted them up from there. Actually, Greg went up with him on that initial one. They were able to come right on top of him as I was just kind of like anchoring down myself. They flew off as they were recovering the litter and the survivor and Greg, and then they came back around for me as I had to climb back up the hill for all the equipment. Well,
Yeah. Clean up your.
gathering up, yeah. And then Derek came back, the crew chief, and sent down a hoist on me, and it was again icicles. I remember the icicles that were all over the place. It was freaking cold. And you're from Washington, so you know how it is. But yeah, and then I recovered, and we end up going to Harborview, I think, if it was the hospital nearby there. And that's always a cool experience too.
And I know I asked when I interviewed you both, and I don't remember if either of you knew, but did you save the piece of wood that was sawed in between them to present him?
No.
That is a keepsake, man. I would want that forever. That would
Cool. Now I think about it. Every time we landed at Harborview, and Greg knows this too, but for me, the doctors there were incredible. I know they make shows about these people, but these doctors, ER guys, they always look forward to seeing us. And it was really cool when we showed up. They would be smiling. It looked like we were bringing them some good work. And in this case, we never hung around for the surgery it took to get this log out of his stomach. But I think it would have been kind of cool to have hanging up in the office for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah, who jumped? Was that you, Greg? You jump out and like give a rundown to the medics at Harborview, or how
You know,
are you
it
calling that
it
in on
kind
the
of
radio?
it kind of changes. Harborview is one of those places, huge helipad, which is awesome because
Mhm.
We started off with 8 trees, and then we moved to 60s, none of which are small compared to like the Care Flight helicopters.
Hmm.
So we take up some room there, and they don't come to see you necessarily. You'll get whatever ambulance is there. So usually the swimmer and I would go cruise into the ER, and they would have a trauma bay ready for us. And we would actually talk, it's just like the movies or the TV shows. They get in there and they're frantically doing all this stuff, and you're yelling over the top of that, trying to give a report. But really, it was from helicopter all the way inside. We're dealing with them all the way to the very end, really, until they get to that true doctor. And they did. They always looked at us like we were crazy because we'd come in with snow and stuff all over us, and rappel harnesses, and like covered with climbing equipment and things like that. And it's not. I think we were the only ones that would come in like that. So it was a showstopper every time we went in there. People would look at us
Yeah.
like, "Oh man, what do you got now?"
Oh, I'm sure. That's awesome. Yeah, it's a cool, for those that don't know, like you fly, the approach is like right over Seattle, and you come in like over the Interstate 5, the I-5. So like everyone driving's just like looking up, and yeah, that's a 60 is a lot bigger than the normal life flight. So yeah, I can imagine like the doctors show up and they're like, what the like, you don't get that every day or any day. That's cool.
I'm
And
sure
that's the
there were
thing.
some major discussions after we left about how this was going to go down and how they were going to get that thing out of there. No doubt. And I heard that they were actually in surgery for quite a while to get that thing out of there. So it wasn't an easy task, even when we were done. Those guys were working hard for a while afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, that dude has a gnarly scar. I hope he's listening to this. And it'd be cool just to reunite. It'd be cool to have him on.
That would be cool.
Um, but yeah, I can imagine like sap and like everything that, needles and whatever could be internal that could then cause issues. I could imagine that's the cleanup job, but just taking some time. Drew, you're still in for however long, doing amazing things.
Yeah.
Like, get us up to speed. Where are you at now?
I'm over HSC 21. I'm a command master chief now, so no longer am I doing the air rescue stuff. So I'm a part of the triad here with the commanding officer, the executive officer, and myself. So I've approximately 430 sailors, and we're expeditionary squadron. So we're doing everything from search and rescue to mine countermeasure stuff to combat search and rescue to direct action. So we pretty much do everything. Large group of AWs. I have one SMT here and approximately 20 pilots. So pretty busy place.
Yeah, that's amazing. How is it being the command master chief? Like, are you flying at all?
I try not to fly. So I flew with the previous skipper because he asked me to go fly with him. My last flight, just so happened to be at Woodby Island, I was this command master chief over on the Gabby Giffords, and my CO at the time, Will Carr, Captain Will Carr, he's afraid of heights, and we were just so happened to be up in Woodby, and I wanted to get him on a flight. So Party Udall, lieutenant at the time, commander, then was the OIC for Woodby, and I asked him if I can get a flight for the captain and myself. So he created space. We went on kind of a SAR flight, did some things, and halfway through that, we ended up getting a rescue call. So as a command master chief and the captain on board the helicopter, Party, Lieutenant Commander Udall at the time, decided to just take us with them. And it was kind of cool because did one more rescue and recovering a girl that was halfway on that same mountain at Whidbey, by the way.
Yeah.
She had lost her mind, escaped from some psych ward, and started trying to climb down this cliff. So they rescued her halfway, doing a quick strop recovery. And while I was outside the window, kind of looking down and just observing what they were doing. They did a great job too. So that was my last official flight, and I just kind of wanted that to be the end. It hasn't totally worked out that way, but that was my goal.
Yeah, it definitely takes its toll, I'd imagine, physically. After how many hours you got?
Just around 4,300 ish. I wasn't flying units the entire time. Like SARS going, I was an instructor.
Mhm.
But when I did fly at squadrons, we flew. a lot. But there's some other AWs with 5,000 plus.
Oh, I know. It's nuts. I
It's
mean, for
insane.
what you have is an amazing amount as well. That's crazy. So what do you plan to do when you do retire? Because
Do not, Brian, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. I don't. And so right now, again, I really enjoy the company, right? I enjoy service. I enjoy serving with patriots. And currently my triad are just really great leaders that want to do good things. And as long as I'm surrounded by good people that want to do good things for our country and serve, I want to stay as long as possible. But I'm going to get forced out here shortly, obviously, but I just really enjoy service. You know, it's one of the few things that I get enjoyment out of. And when I get out, maybe I'll continue that in some other way. But I don't know what that is yet.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's so many areas to serve outside. You know, I talk to so many people now, just kind of in my role and what I'm doing. So it's who you are, and that doesn't stop. It just looks different. And I think you're going to find a lot of fulfillment in what the next chapter is, because you have so much just amazing wisdom and experiences that you will serve on probably a capacity larger than you even can, realize at this point. So I'm excited to see that. But you're not done yet, so don't quit your day job yet. But definitely start thinking about that and just being open to what that could look like. And you and I are good friends now, and I'm always here to help as well.
Yeah, thanks, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah, and Greg, you got out. Did you get out like 10 years ago?
Yeah, yep, just about 10 years ago now, almost exactly.
So tell us about what you're doing, because you're still serving at high capacity. So
Yeah, so man, I got out and um I missed it instantly. It wasn't, it was a choice for the family. It was kind of like I was at, 20 years, made chief kind of thing. What do I do now? So I got out, struggled to try and find things. I was a director at a hospital, and then I, started doing some executive protection work with the medical stuff. Struggled to find like a good meaning, like something that was comparable to like search and rescue in the Navy, or to just doing military work, I guess. And it's hard. It's hard to compare that, to match that. Number one, you become an adrenaline junkie. You love climbing on the mountains, love playing with the helicopters, that kind of stuff, and that's gone. And I was always like, man, this isn't enough. This isn't enough. And I've kind of hit a spot now. I'm an acute care nurse practitioner, working in emergency medicine, or working in and around hospitals. Still volunteer for search and rescue, still teach. But it's not the same. It's never the same. It's not the same camaraderie. It's not the same level of excitement. Good people all the way around, but it's just not the team that you end up having in Navy search and rescue. Everyone's so tight. Everyone's of the same mindset. That's something that I miss to this day. So
yeah, and you'll never get that. So the whole camaraderie thing, like I've never met anyone who says, yeah, I got out and man, it was so much better than the military camaraderie. It doesn't happen. So, if we're ever getting out and we're seeking that, it's a lost cause. It just won't happen. But with that said, you do have that, and the brothers and sisters you've, served with are, still exist out there, and that never goes away. Now it's just kind of channeling everything that you have and what you're clearly doing now in serving others, helping others, and getting that fulfillment. But yeah, it's tough, because if we camp out in the past, we go straight into depression, and it's tough. And I think everyone who gets out, deals with that at a certain level, some more, some less. But we do have such a support system, and there's just a lot of amazing things. I know for myself, I got into high altitude mountaineering because the camaraderie is there as well, because you're hooked up, you're roped up to the person next to you, and you're essentially in those traumatic environments and wearing all the cool gear and training hard. And it took me almost dying on Everest and all this other stuff that I've went through to kind of look back and go, huh, unconsciously I'm just chasing that trauma.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely in a healthier place now because of just the awareness in dealing with it. But every person is unique, and we do definitely have this support system. All right, so we just went a little too serious. So we're gonna throw you both back into the Whidbey SAR Hilo. Okay, so think back 10 plus years ago. We have air crew, rescue swimmer, we have SMT, and you're going to be launched on a theoretical scenario. You guys ready?
Sure.
Fire away.
This is just to see the mindset. This isn't the right or wrong. It's just here's the scenario. Okay. This is an active volcano evacuation. So Mount Baker is erupting. A group of tourists is stranded near the summit of an erupting volcano, Mount Baker, with ash, clouds, and lava flows cutting off escape routes. Now launch. Were you guys firewood?
Yep.
Okay. Firewood 616. I don't know what the number sequences are.
Yeah.
So you're heading out there. What's going through your mind from an SMT, from a rescue swimmer? It's weird to say rescue swimmer when you're doing like the land stuff. So SAR crewman.
Yeah, I mean, since you brought it up, it's like, what's the altitude that the survivors are at, right? And where are the winds at? And whether or not it's even possible to get up that high with the aircraft we have. That's the first thing that's on my mind. And then based on how many survivors, do we know any sort of injuries, and where are we getting the information from? Normally it's from the sheriff's department there in Washington that provides us pretty good darn details. So we have a really good idea of what we're approaching with. But when it comes to that volcano specifically, Mount Baker is a little bit different, but some of the bigger ones, I'm thinking about the altitude. What else you got, Greg?
A lot of it's time on station, like you were talking about. Can we accomplish this? How much time do we have? Altitude, if there's multiple, can we carry them all off in one go? Where we're going to go from there? That kind of stuff. I think you're right on with it, Drew.
Nice. Have you guys ever rescued anyone from an erupting volcano?
I
Definitely no.
Yeah, that's a unique one. No, that's awesome though, because you guys, man, just right to it. It's like you're back in the helo in the cabin, and your mind is just goes there. And that's just how the mind works. When you've been so close and you're working in the red for so long, it's like I don't know if that ever goes away. It's that adaptive unconscious of just, nope, this is the scenario. Here's what we're doing. And
yeah, I mean, this, Brian, the sweep checks, right? And that's always the number one considerations. And when you're looking at altitude specifically, sometimes we're very short on time on the deck, right? And you have accidents or ambulances and EMTs have all this time in the world when they're on the roads to deal with whatever they can. And depending on whether or not we have 2 minutes to get survivors out of a dangerous area versus we have 10 minutes, there's a significant difference, and the injuries may be the same. So it could be just as dangerous removing the survivor too quickly, and then us getting them into the aircraft with the oxygen, and then Greg and the other SMTs doing their things. But you're right. That's kind of like the common ground, and it's pretty basic for AWs as air crewmen to understand those basic things. But until you get to a place like Whidbey, you don't really understand the power of and the dangers that go along with those things.
You've both had incredible experiences that most people can never relate to. But with that, you have all this experience and wisdom. So what's a bit of wisdom that you would leave our listeners with?
Yeah. When you say wisdom, is like, what would I have done differently and all over again? And like I said in that example, where you see a guy that's stuck into a tree near a cliffside, and that, to me, that's like there's a God, or there's something bigger than us, right? And so whatever path I have experienced, it's happened for a reason. And I want to change a thing. But I would always choose to do something that you enjoy. Don't do it just because you have to, or you're being forced into something in order to be promoted or something like that. I was told constantly, if I would have gone to would-be search and rescue, I would never make chief, right? That's where I made chief, right? So if you have an opportunity to choose something, do the stuff that you could be excited about. Enjoy what you do, you know? And I think when you asked me earlier, like, what do I want to do when I grow up, is I'm trying to figure out that next thing I can actually truly enjoy. And I haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Greg.
Oh, I don't know if I have anything as prolific as he does, but I would say, speaking to the community as a whole, that very few people get to go to Inland SAR, but get to go to Station SAR, get to experience different things, and that's kind of the search and rescue thing is you never know where you're going, you never know what you're going to do until you're there, really. But never stop learning, never stop training, never stop bettering yourself. And there's always an opportunity. You got to seek it out sometimes. You can feel like you're on top of the world, but this community will humble you real quick if you stay with that. It's something that you need to work on. And you can spend 20 years, 30 years, you can spend your entire time there and be humbled all the way through that over and over again.
Yeah, that's great wisdom. Yep. Humility is, I think I even had a chapter called Humility in the book, because it's such a big part of just us as humans. If we don't have the ability to be humble, we're not learning. You're not pushing beyond, our safety bubble. But also it's just that arrogance, and I don't know, there's a fine line between cocky and ass. And you can identify that, pretty easy with a lot of people. And, just the humility is, I think, what differentiates, us from a lot of the rest. And you hope, and sometimes you have to test that, especially when you're young and arrogant. And when you get knocked down, you can either learn from that or you can go do something else. But I think a lot of the folks that stuck around and have done some amazing thing, it's because of the humility. You're willing to give your life up to save someone you don't even know, someone that's potentially even trying to kill you. Well, guys, thank you so much for spending time with me and all the listeners. It's your stories are just incredible. Just the camaraderie and the way you guys work together, and just this mutual respect, and I know you guys hadn't even seen each other physically for quite some time. So it's just cool to get you guys connected and to have you on here. So thank you so much.
Yeah, Brian, thanks for the opportunity. It is pretty cool to see Greg, right? So thanks for bringing him to me too. And like you said, it's a small community. It's a tight community. I feel grateful to be a part of it. And man, I've been listening to some of your other podcasts. You have some pretty darn cool people that have been on, Erica, Corey, along with so many other cool ones. So thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
I second that. Yeah, thanks for having us here and telling the stories about these guys. All amazing people, and the community as a whole, an amazing group of people led by amazing people like Drew over here. Couldn't ask for a better part of my career, a better part of my life than to be able to do stuff with guys like Drew out there doing rescues.
Well, it's amazing. Cool. Well, thank you. And for everyone else, we will see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Calm in the Chaos podcast. Please subscribe to be notified of future episodes. And if you enjoyed what you just heard, please leave a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts. Until next time, get out there and make a difference so others may live.